Mail-order bride finds her groom murdered. A half-Apache outlaw offers her protection and justice. The sun hung low in the sky, painting the dusty frontier town with streaks of gold and red. A light wind blew, carrying the scent of dry earth and smoke from distant chimneys. Emma's heart beat fast in her chest as she rode toward the small town that was supposed to be her new home. She had traveled for weeks from the east, leaving behind everything familiar: her family, her friends, and the life she had known. All she carried now was hope, and a small suitcase filled with the few things a bride might need. She had been promised a husband, a life of security, and the chance to start over. Letters had passed back and forth for months, filled with warmth and imagined smiles. And now, at last, she was here, ready to meet the man who would be hers. But as she reached the main street, something felt wrong. The air was too quiet. The townspeople hurried past, heads down, eyes wary. There was no welcome committee, no cheerful faces waiting to greet her. Just silence. Emma dismounted from her horse, her boots sinking into the loose dirt. She clutched her suitcase tightly, scanning the empty sidewalks. The small wooden buildings, painted with fading colors, seemed ordinary at first glance, yet there was a heaviness in the air, a shadow that seemed to stretch across every corner. Something had happened, something terrible. Her first stop was the sheriff's office. She had heard the town had a lawman, a man named Collins. The sign above the door creaked in the wind. Emma pushed it open, stepping into the cool, dark interior. The smell of tobacco and old wood made her stomach turn slightly. "Sheriff Collins?" she called softly, her voice trembling. There was no reply. She stepped further in, and her eyes fell on a figure sitting behind a desk, slumped forward. Papers were scattered across the surface, and a dark stain spread across the floorboards. Her heart froze. She took a step closer and realized with horror the man wasn't the sheriff. It was her husband-to-be, lying lifeless, his face pale and eyes wide with fear even in death. Emma stumbled backward, gripping her suitcase as if it could anchor her to reality. Tears welled in her eyes. Her fingers shook as she reached out to touch him, but she stopped herself. The warmth was gone. He was gone. A sudden noise made her turn. From the shadows of the alley, a figure emerged. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with a quiet confidence. His face was half covered by a dark hat, the other half showing sharp features and dark eyes that seemed to miss nothing. He had a lean, muscular build, and the way he carried himself spoke of someone who had survived more than one fight. Emma took a small step back, fear and instinct urging her to flee.
"Don't be afraid," the man said in a low voice. "You're not safe here, but I can help you."
Emma's mind raced. Who was he? Another killer? Another danger? I don't understand," she stammered. "Who are you?" "The name's Cale," he said. "I'm someone who knows this town better than anyone, and I know who did this to your husband." Emma's stomach turned. Who? Who would do this? Cale's eyes narrowed. Men who think they own everything.
"Land, power, lives. Your husband refused to give them what they wanted, so they took him."
They want everyone to know what happens when you say no. Emma felt a chill run through her. Her husband had been kind, gentle, a man who never raised his voice. How could anyone hurt him? Cale stepped closer, his presence both comforting and commanding.
"You can't stay here," he said.
"They'll come for you next, but I can keep you safe if you trust me." Emma shook her head. I don't know you. Why would I trust you?" "Because," Cale said quietly. "I've seen what fear does to people, and I've seen what courage can do. Right now, you're all alone. They're counting on that. You have two choices, run or fight. But if you want justice, if you want to survive, you'll need someone who knows this land and its dangers." Emma looked at him, the lines on his face, the hardened set of his jaw, the way his eyes scanned the horizon for threats. She could see he spoke the truth. She wanted to cry, scream, run, hide, but something inside her knew he was right. Alone, she was helpless. Together, maybe, just maybe, she had a chance. "All right," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I'll trust you." Kyle gave a small nod. "Good. We need to move. Quickly." They left the town quietly, sticking to the shadows and hidden paths Cale knew well. As they moved, he explained what had happened. The town was under the control of a gang of men who claimed ownership over every piece of land around. They had killed her husband to send a message. Anyone who defied them would face the same fate. Cale had been tracking them for months, waiting for the right time to strike, but even he hadn't expected to find her in the middle of their deadly plans. Emma listened, trying to absorb everything. The world she had imagined, filled with love and hope, seemed to crumble around her. But Cale's calm, steady presence gave her a strange sense of security. She realized that fear would not save her, but courage might. They stopped in an old cabin hidden in a grove of trees outside the town. Smoke curled from the chimney, and the door creaked as Cale pushed it open. Inside, it was simple but safe. A fire burned in the hearth, casting warm light across the rough wooden walls. Emma sank into a chair, exhausted, her mind still reeling. "You need rest," Cale said, handing her a cup of water. "Tomorrow, we start planning. We'll need a strategy if you want justice, and if you want to survive." Emma stared into the fire, thinking of her husband. She imagined his smile, the soft way he had written to her in letters, the hope they had shared. Her hands clenched into fists. She would not let his death be in vain. She would not run. She would not hide. Cale watched her silently, recognizing the fire growing in her eyes. Few people had the strength to face what she had faced. Most would have broken, given in to fear. But Emma, she was different. He could see it. The human will to endure, to fight, and to rise above loss. It was strong in her.
"You have a choice," Cale said softly. "Fear or action."
Fear will keep you alive for a day. Action will keep you alive for a lifetime. It will also make sure your husband did not die in vain." Emma looked at him, nodding slowly. Her fear remained, but it was now joined by something else: determination. If Cale could guide her, she could learn. If Cale could fight, she could stand. Together, perhaps, they could challenge the men who thought they were untouchable. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, rattling the cabin. Emma closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. She had arrived in this town, hoping for love. Instead, she had found death. But she had also found a protector, someone who could teach her strength, someone who understood injustice. And somewhere deep inside, she felt the first spark of hope. Tomorrow, they would plan. Tomorrow, the first steps toward justice would begin. And Emma knew one thing for certain: she would not be a victim. Not here. Not ever again. For now, she allowed herself to rest. Tomorrow, the fight would begin. But tonight, she survived. And survival, in this world, was the first victory. The morning sun crept over the horizon, casting long shadows across the rugged land surrounding the small frontier town. Emma woke to the sound of Cale stirring the fire in the cabin. The warmth of the hearth offered some comfort, but the events of the previous day weighed heavily on her. Her husband's murder haunted her thoughts, and the reality of the town's danger pressed on her chest like a heavy stone. Cale was already moving with practiced efficiency, loading 2 saddlebags with supplies. His movements were precise and silent, a man used to surviving by his wits. Emma watched him, fascinated and afraid at the same time. There was something about him, calm, strong, and unyielding, that made her feel both safe and alive in a way she had never felt before. "We can't stay here," Cale said without turning. His voice was low but firm. "Those men who killed your husband, they control everything in that town. They have eyes everywhere. If we linger, they will find us." Emma nodded, though her hands shook slightly. Where will we go?" she asked. Her voice was small, but beneath it, she tried to find courage. Cale glanced at her briefly. "Out there," he said, pointing toward the hills beyond the trees. "The land knows me."
I know it. We'll use that to our advantage.
"But you need to be ready. You won't be safe until we can face them on our terms." Emma swallowed hard. She had never handled a weapon in her life, never faced real danger. But the fire in her heart was growing. She remembered Cale's words from last night. "Fear keeps you alive for a day. Action keeps you alive for a lifetime." She wanted action. She wanted justice. They rode quietly through the morning fog, sticking to hidden trails that Cale knew from years of wandering the land. The terrain was rugged, full of rocky ridges, hidden ravines, and dense patches of trees. It was perfect for someone like Cale, who had grown up moving through these hills as a hunter and a fighter. Emma struggled to keep up at first, but Cale's patience never faltered. He adjusted her saddle, showed her how to balance, and reminded her to keep her eyes on the path ahead. "This land can save you," he said, "if you respect it. It can also kill you if you forget that." Hours passed. The silence between them was not uncomfortable. Cale let her think, let her absorb the harsh beauty of the land. There were moments when she caught herself staring at him, at his strong hands, the way his eyes never rested, always scanning, always calculating. She felt a strange mixture of gratitude and curiosity. He was her protector, yes, but also a mystery she wanted to understand. By midday, they reached a small clearing with a stream running through it. Cale stopped, allowing Emma to dismount. She bent to drink from the water, feeling the cool liquid slide down her throat. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to feel some relief. Cale sat nearby, sharpening his knife with careful, slow strokes. "We need to plan," he said. "We can't fight them head on. They have numbers, guns, and power in the town, but they do not have the land."
We can use that, and we can use me.
Emma sat beside him, watching the water ripple. How do we even start?" she asked quietly. Her voice carried a note of fear, but also determination. Cale looked at her, eyes intense. "We gather information first. We watch. We learn their routines. We discover who really ordered your husband's death. And then we act." Emma nodded, letting the words sink in. She knew it would not be easy. But for the first time since her husband's death, she felt that they might actually have a chance. The days that followed were tense. They moved cautiously, watching the town from hidden vantage points, noting who spoke to whom, who carried weapons, and who made decisions. Emma learned quickly, absorbing Cale's instructions. She learned to recognize danger in a glance, to read the land, and to trust instincts she never knew she had. Cale taught her basic skills of survival: how to find safe paths, how to move silently, and how to stay unseen. He showed her how to reload a revolver and aim carefully, emphasizing patience over speed. Emma was a quick learner, and Cale could see that her determination rivaled his own. She was not a helpless bride. She was becoming someone capable of surviving, of fighting back. One evening, they camped on a ridge overlooking the town. The sky was painted with the colors of sunset, and the town below looked peaceful from a distance, though Cale knew the violence it hid. Emma shivered, both from the cool air and the fear that still lingered in her heart. "They killed him for money," Cale said quietly, breaking the silence. "Your husband had rights to land that someone wanted. They thought they could scare him, make him give in, but he didn't. And for that, he died." Emma's hands tightened around her knees. "He was a good man," she whispered. "And I promised him I would be there, that I would." Her voice broke. She pressed her face into her hands, feeling a mixture of grief and anger. Cale placed a hand on her shoulder. "And you will keep that promise," he said firmly. "Not by crying, not by hiding, by standing strong, by making sure they pay for what they did." She looked up at him, tears in her eyes, but now mixed with resolve. "I want to help," she said. "I don't just want to survive, I want justice." Cale studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Good. Then you'll need to trust me completely. And you'll need to trust yourself. Fear is natural. It keeps you alive. But courage keeps you free." The night was long. They took turns keeping watch, listening for any signs of danger. From the ridge they could see the town lights flickering, hear distant shouts, the occasional gunshot, the sound of horses on the road. Emma learned to sleep lightly, to notice every movement, every shadow. Over the next week, they followed the patterns of the town's powerful men. Cale had connections and contacts, people who owed him favors or feared him enough to speak quietly in his presence. Slowly, they pieced together a picture of the men who had orchestrated the murder. They were greedy, cruel, and ruthless. They ruled the town through fear, but they underestimated one thing: the human spirit. Emma began to see her own strength. She learned to track, to hide, to speak softly but firmly. She discovered that she could face fear without breaking, that her heart could beat in the presence of danger without giving in to panic. Each day she became more capable, more aware, more human in the best sense, resilient, courageous, and determined to protect what she loved. Cale noticed the change, and a small approving smile occasionally crossed his face. He rarely trusted anyone, but Emma's determination, her willingness to fight despite grief and fear, reminded him of something he had long believed: that humans, even when underestimated, could rise above impossible odds. One afternoon, while scouting the town from a hidden ridge, they spotted one of the men responsible for the murder. He was arrogant, laughing as he rode through the streets with armed men around him. Emma's hands tightened around her rifle. She felt a surge of anger, a fire that had been growing since the day she found her husband dead. Cale placed a hand gently on hers. "Patience," he whispered. "We don't act out of anger. We act with purpose. Justice, not revenge, will win this battle." Emma nodded, taking a deep breath. The fire remained, but it was now tempered by focus. She was no longer just a bride lost in a cruel world. She was a fighter. She was a human determined to survive, to resist, and to ensure that those who had taken her husband faced the consequences. As night fell, They returned to their hidden cabin. Emma stared at the stars, feeling the weight of her new reality. Cale prepared their small meal in silence, the firelight dancing across his sharp features. The world outside was cruel, but inside this cabin there was strategy, there was preparation, and there was the first flicker of hope. "Tomorrow," Cale said quietly, "we gather more information. We watch. We learn everything about them. And we begin to plan. Your husband may be gone, but his fight, and your fight, has only just begun." Emma nodded, feeling a strange sense of clarity. She had faced fear, and she had chosen courage. She had trusted a stranger, and that trust had given her a chance to survive. And in the shadows of this frontier town, she discovered something she never expected. The human spirit, when pushed to its limits, could burn brighter than any threat. She lay down beside the fire, listening to the crackle of flames. Cale kept watch, as always, his eyes scanning the darkness. Emma closed her eyes, letting exhaustion take over. She was no longer the frightened bride who had arrived in the town. She was a survivor. She was learning to fight, and she knew that, together with Cale, she could face the men who had stolen everything from her. For the first time since her husband's death, she felt ready, not just to survive, but to act. And in that moment, the shadows of the town no longer seemed quite so threatening. The dawn broke over the hills with a soft pink light, but Emma did not feel its calm. Sleep had been restless. Her mind kept turning over the events of the past week. She had survived. She had learned, and she had grown stronger. Aye, but the knowledge that her husband's killers still ruled the town gnawed at her. Every time she closed her eyes, she could see his face frozen in terror and hear the sound of silence that followed. Cale stirred the fire, already awake. He moved with ease, checking the rifles and supplies, his eyes scanning the horizon. Emma had grown used to his quiet confidence. She had come to rely on him, but she had also come to see that he relied on her in ways he would never admit. "We move today," Cale said, breaking the silence. His voice was low, deliberate. "We follow the men who killed your husband. We find out why, and we make sure every step we take brings us closer to justice." Emma nodded, gripping the strap of her rifle. "I'm ready," she said. Her voice was steady now, though the fire in her heart still burned bright. She had made a choice. She would not let grief control her. She would turn it into strength. They rode down a narrow path that led toward the town, hidden by the trees. Cale had chosen the route carefully, one that allowed them to observe without being seen. The streets were quiet in the early morning light, but Cale warned her that silence was deceptive. In towns like these, the quiet was often a trap. As they approached the main street, they saw one of the gang leaders walking with a group of armed men. His face was cruel, his posture confident. Emma felt a surge of anger. This was the man who had given the order, the one whose greed had taken her husband's life. She gritted her teeth, her fingers tightening on the rifle. Cale placed a hand on hers. "Patience," he whispered. "We are not here to kill yet. We are here to learn." They followed at a distance, slipping into alleys and behind crates, watching the men interact. Emma noticed how they spoke to one another, how fear and loyalty mixed in their expressions. Some of the townspeople scurried past, heads down, avoiding the gang. Others, Cale explained, were paid informants, reporting every movement. "This town is built on fear," Cale said quietly. "But fear is not stronger than courage." It never is. Emma absorbed the lesson. She realized that the human spirit Even in the face of cruelty could still rise. That spirit could survive. It could fight. And it could change the balance of power. As they continued their observation, they noticed something strange. A shipment of crates being loaded onto a wagon under the cover of a barn. Cale's eyes narrowed. "They're hiding something," he muttered. "Something valuable. Something that gives them power." Emma felt her pulse quicken. If this was what her husband had been protecting, then the stakes were higher than she had imagined. She had thought his death was senseless, but now she saw it was part of a larger scheme. They waited until nightfall to investigate further. Under the cover of darkness, they slipped past guards and approached the barn. The smell of smoke and oil filled the air. Emma's heart pounded, but she forced herself to breathe steadily. Bah! She was no longer a frightened bride. She was a partner in this mission. Inside the barn, they found crates filled with gold coins, weapons, and documents detailing land ownership and secret deals. Emma's eyes widened. He must have refused to give them control of this land. Cale nodded grimly. Exactly. And now we know what we're up against. They're not just cruel. They're organized, dangerous, and ruthless. But knowing their plan gives us an advantage. They took careful note of the shipment schedule and the guards' rotations, committing every detail to memory. Cale taught Emma how to record and remember, how to observe without being noticed, and how to use the shadows as allies. Over the next few days, they continued to gather information. Each time they returned to their cabin, Emma felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. She was learning to think strategically, to anticipate danger, and to act decisively. Cale noticed her growth, and for the first time he allowed himself a faint smile of approval. One evening, as they rested by the stream, Emma spoke softly. "Cale, why are you helping me? You don't owe me anything. You don't even know me." Cale's eyes were dark, reflecting the last light of the sunset. "Because injustice offends me," he said simply, "and because I've seen what happens when people with courage refuse to be silenced." You have that courage. You remind me why I keep fighting, even when it seems impossible. Emma felt a warmth in her chest. For the first time, she realized that this man, this outlaw, was not just her protector. He was also a mirror, showing her what she could become if she dared. Their moment of quiet was broken by the sound of horses in the distance. Cale tensed immediately, signaling Emma to stay low. From the shadows, they watched as a rider approached. It was one of the gang's scouts, riding fast and careless. Cale motioned for Emma to stay behind a tree while he moved to intercept. He emerged from the shadows, stepping into the moonlight, his presence commanding. The scout did not see him until it was too late. Cale moved like a shadow, quiet but deadly, and quickly subdued the man. He tied him up and dragged him into the underbrush. Emma's heart raced. She had never seen violence up close like this. But she did not look away. She watched Cale work with precision, controlling the situation without unnecessary cruelty. It was clear he had done this many times before. The scout, trembling, finally spoke. I don't know anything," he stammered. Cale's eyes narrowed. "You will tell us the truth, or your silence will be the last choice you ever make." Under Cale's steady gaze, the scout confessed everything. The names of the men who had ordered the murder, the schedules of the shipments, and the secret plans to expand their control over nearby land. Emma listened carefully, absorbing every detail. Each piece of information brought them closer to justice. After the scout was released, carefully with a warning, Cale turned to Emma. "This is it," he said. "Now we know who we are fighting. Now we know what we are up against. And soon We will strike. Emma nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and determination. She had seen her husband die. She had faced the shadows of the town. And now she was armed not just with weapons, but with knowledge. Knowledge that could turn the tide. Over the next week, they made careful preparations. They mapped the town, studied guard shifts, and planned every step of their strategy. But Kale taught Emma how to move silently, how to use her environment, and how to anticipate danger. Each day she grew stronger, more confident, more capable. She was no longer just a bride. She was a force to be reckoned with. One night as they rested near the ridge, Emma spoke softly. Kale, do you think we can really do this, take down men like that? Kale looked at her, his eyes hard but honest. I don't know, he said, but I do know this. They underestimate us. They think courage is weakness. They think determination can be broken, and they are wrong. Humans can endure more than anyone expects, and we are human. Emma felt a surge of hope. She had been afraid, alone, and powerless. Now she felt capable, alive, and ready. The world had taken much from her, but it had not taken her spirit. And with Kale by her side, she knew that the killers would soon learn that the human will to survive and to fight was stronger than fear, stronger than cruelty, stronger than death itself. As the first light of dawn touched the hills, Emma and Kale made their way back to the town's edge. The time for hiding was ending. The time for action was coming. And in that moment, Emma felt the fire inside her burn brighter than ever before. She would fight, she would endure, she would ensure that the blood spilled in injustice would not be forgotten. The truth was written in blood, and soon those who had spilled it would pay the price. The sun rose slowly over the hills, casting long shadows across the frontier town. Emma sat on a ridge overlooking the streets below, a rifle across her knees. She had watched the town for days, memorizing every corner, every alley, every shadow where danger could hide. With Kale beside her, she no longer felt the helpless fear that had gripped her when she first arrived. She felt strength. She felt determination. She felt the fire of justice burning inside her. Kale moved beside her, silent as the wind. His eyes scanned the town, sharp and unblinking. Today, he said quietly, we act. They think we are weak. They think courage is nothing. They are wrong. Emma took a deep breath, steadying herself. The weight of what they were about to do pressed on her shoulders. But she had learned to carry weight. She had learned to fight. And she had learned that humans, even when outnumbered, could survive and strike back. They moved down the ridge, slipping between shadows and crates, silent as ghosts. The town appeared peaceful, but Emma knew better. Peace, in a place ruled by fear, was always fragile. One wrong move could mean death. Kale's presence was a constant reminder. Survive, adapt, and strike only when ready. Their first target was a small outpost at the edge of the town where the gang kept weapons and supplies. Kale led, and Emma followed, moving silently, her senses alert. Every sound, every flicker of movement told a story. They had learned the guards' routines, the weak points in the walls, and the paths where they could move, unseen. Emma's heart pounded, but not with fear. With each step, she felt more capable. She could see what Kale saw, anticipate danger, and act with precision. They reached the outpost without being detected. Kale signaled, and they moved inside, using shadows and cover to approach the weapons stash. Emma's eyes widened as she saw the rifles, ammunition, and other supplies. "We can do this," she whispered. "We can fight back." Cale nodded. "Yes. And tonight we will start." As night fell, they moved like shadows through the streets. Emma had learned to blend with darkness, to move without making a sound. She carried a pistol and a small knife, but her greatest weapon was her mind. She had learned to think ahead, to anticipate threats, and to act decisively. They reached the house of one of the gang leaders. The man inside was arrogant, laughing with a group of men, unaware that danger had crept to his doorstep. Cale signaled for Emma to stay behind, but she stepped forward. "I can do this," she whispered. Cale studied her, then nodded. "You are ready. Remember what I taught you. Focus, precision, control." Emma took a deep breath and moved silently, positioning herself near the doorway. She could see the leader, unaware of the danger lurking in his home. Emma aimed her pistol carefully, her hands steady, her mind sharp. She took a deep breath and fired, hitting the lock on the door and creating a loud distraction. The men jumped, startled, and Cale moved in like a shadow, disarming two of them before they even realized what had happened. Emma's heart raced, but she did not falter. She moved with Cale, covering his back, striking when needed and using every lesson he had taught her. Together, they were unstoppable. Humans using their courage, intelligence, and determination to turn fear against those who had ruled through it. The fight was swift but brutal. The gang members had numbers, but Emma and Cale had strategy. They used shadows, speed, and precision to neutralize the threat. By the time the last man had fallen or fled, the house was theirs. Emma stood in the doorway, breathing heavily, feeling a mixture of fear, exhilaration, and triumph. She had survived. She had fought. She had struck back. Cale looked at her, a faint smile crossing his face. "You did well," he said. "Better than I expected." Emma felt a surge of pride. She had been terrified when she first arrived in the town, helpless and alone. Now she had faced danger and emerged stronger. She had learned that humans, even in the harshest circumstances, could survive, fight, and claim justice. But their mission was far from over. The leaders of the gang were still alive, and they would not take this defeat lightly. Cale and Emma knew that the final confrontation was coming. They needed a plan that would ensure victory and protect the town from further corruption. Over the next few days, they continued their preparations. They gathered intelligence, recruited a few brave townspeople who had been too afraid to act before, and reinforced their weapons and supplies. Emma's confidence grew with each step. She was no longer just a bride seeking revenge. She was a strategist, a fighter, and a symbol of resistance. Cale watched her with quiet admiration. Few people could learn as quickly, adapt as effectively, and maintain focus under pressure. Emma had become his equal, a partner in every sense of the word. Together, they embodied the human spirit, resilient, clever, and unyielding in the face of danger. One evening, as they planned their final strike, Emma spoke softly. "Cale, do you think we can win?" Cale looked at her, eyes hard but honest. "I don't know if it will be easy," he said. "But I know this. Humans can endure more than anyone expects. And humans, when they refuse to kneel, can change the course of their destiny. We have the advantage of courage, intelligence, and the will to survive." "That is more than they have." Emma nodded, feeling a surge of determination. She had learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. She would act. She would fight. she would ensure that the men who had taken everything from her. The night of the final confrontation arrived. Emma and Cale moved silently through the town, striking with precision and coordination. They neutralized guards, freed captives, and disrupted the gang's operations. Each step was calculated, each action deliberate. Emma's heart raced, but she remained focused, her training and instincts guiding her. The final showdown took place in the main hall of the gang leader's mansion. Cale and Emma confronted the men who had ruled through fear and cruelty. The fight was intense, but Emma's courage and Cale's experience proved unstoppable. The leaders were defeated, their power shattered, and the town was finally free from their control. As dawn broke over the town, Emma stood beside Cale, looking at the streets that were no longer ruled by fear. She had faced danger, grief, and injustice, and she had emerged stronger. She had learned that humans, even when underestimated, could survive, fight, and reclaim their destiny. Cale placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said. "We did it. Justice has been served." Emma looked at him, a faint smile on her lips. "Yes," she said, "and we survived. That is just the beginning." In the quiet aftermath, the townspeople began to rebuild, inspired by the courage and determination of two humans who refused to kneel. Emma realized that her journey was far from over, but she also knew that she had discovered something powerful. The human spirit, when tested, could rise above any challenge. The shadows of fear had been defeated. The fire of courage burned brighter than ever. And Emma, once a frightened bride, had become a symbol of resilience, justice, and hope.